Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get things started at 4 o'clock today. I think we should be screen sharing some of the rules for today, but just a kind of quick synopsis. We'll be beginning at 4 o'clock. Each candidate will give a brief 3-minute opening statement. I will be the timekeeper, so I'll be letting them know with the timer when they have 30 seconds left on each response. We have about 10 questions that we've been using for these forums that we're hoping to get through. We've asked a few community questions in the past as well, so if we have time, we will try and get to those as well. If you have anything that you would like to ask the candidates, you are free to ask a question in the chat. However, if you would like your question to be asked at our forum live, try and phrase the question in a way that each candidate can answer it equally. We don't allow any kind of pointed questions, so each candidate has the opportunity to answer each question. Of course, the candidates are free to use the chat at their own discretion if they want to respond to anything in there. We will allow as many questions as we can. Once we get to about 4:50, we will stop and allow each candidate to make their closing statements. For those that might have caught the past forums for Ward 1 and for the mayoral forum, we didn't have any issues with uploading, so that's up on YouTube and on our Facebook. We are in the process of uploading the Ward 1 forum. We had to get one of the candidates in to film their responses and edit them into the forum. So we will be putting that up as well. This forum itself will be recorded and uploaded, so you can find those on social media and share that with any of your voting friends. Hopefully you're encouraging everybody to go out and vote. The Chamber of Commerce will be encouraging people to go vote and making an endorsement the week of October 12th. So that's something that people that usually follow our endorsement process can look forward to. We are hoping to get the rest of the forums uploaded that we've done this one tonight and the Ward 1 hopefully by the end of the week. So those will be able to be shared and viewed by everybody on our social networks. All righty, while we are a few minutes away from getting things started, I'm going to go back over some of the rules. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our virtual forum. My name is Taylor Shelton. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce. We thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us on our Ward 2 virtual forum. We have both of our candidates here today. We will allow our candidates to start with their opening statements at 4 o'clock. Each candidate will make a 3-minute opening statement. I will be keeping time. When a candidate has about 30 seconds left, I will audibly let them know. So each candidate has 3 minutes to answer each question and for each opening and closing statement. We will have hopefully about 10 questions that we have for the candidates. We do keep an eye on the chat. So if you do ask a question that is framed correctly for both candidates, we will do our best to try and get to that question. If there's anything that you might want to add to the chat for a candidate, the candidates are free to use that chat at their own discretion. So if they have anything they want to answer, they may answer you there. However, for questions that you would like asked at the forum, we ask that you frame them in a way that each candidate can answer the question equally. We will then at about 4:50 stop the forum and allow the candidates to make their closing statements. I think I covered all of the ground rules that we have. Zane, if you want to go ahead and kick us off of the front page or our opening page here. Go to speaker view. Perfect. All righty. So we'll go ahead and get things started. We were going to go ahead and start with the opening statements. For each question, I will alternate who responds to each question. If the candidates have anything that they'd like to ask me before getting started, go ahead and let me know, but I think we've covered all the ground rules.
I'm ready, Taylor.
All righty. So Councilmember Petty, we will let you kick things off with your 3-minute opening statement. Again, I will let you know when you have 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this democratic process. As we get going, I feel like a lot of us have done quite a few of these virtual format meetings, but if I slip up, please forgive me. I'm sorry, it's my very first pandemic, but I'm going to do my best today to try and tell you about why I'm running for re-election and answer some of the questions that we've heard from the community. I also want to say, right to start off, William, when I learned that you might be running against me early during the filing period, I made a public statement, and I want to repeat it again tonight. And it's just simply, may the best candidate for Ward 2 win. I'm here to run a positive campaign, and I think that's what Ward 2 wants. They want to learn more about who we are and what we plan to do, and that's what I want to talk about for myself today. So I mean that, and if I could be there with you, I'd shake your hand. The reason I'm running for re-election is because I'm passionate about Fayetteville. I love it here, and I was raised to believe that the highest purpose in my life could be to help make lives better for other people. And I'm so passionate about cities and about making this city better for the people that live here. I feel that I can continue to get a lot done in the next 4 years. I feel in my past terms, I've definitely learned a lot. I gained a lot of experience since I was first elected when I was 24 in 2008. And back then in my first term, I definitely made some rookie mistakes. And sometimes I probably still make some mistakes, but now I feel like I'm better able to move forward and to get things done with the new skills and the new relationships I've been able to develop over that time. Right now, I'm focused on the outbreak on COVID-19, and that's what I've been focused on this summer with the parking to patio programs, with the outdoor refreshment area, and with the advertising campaigns that we've been implementing to promote our local businesses that are trying to make it. And that's probably going to be my first priority for at least 2021 in the next term, as we turn from COVID-19 response into COVID-19 long-term recovery. After that, my other top focus areas are climate change and growing inequality, especially with respect to housing.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Fortunately, I think these two issues are very related, and I think we're going to get a chance to talk about them today. But right now, I want to say that affordable housing and climate change are, of course, complex issues. We can solve them. We're already leaders, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of my detailed plans to achieving real results. Thank you. I hope I get your support today.
Sir, Mr. Chesser, you will now be able to make your 3-minute opening statement.
Great. My name is William Chesser. I was born in Fayetteville in 1975, so I guess I'm a little longer in the tooth than my opponent. I lived here until 1982. My father was the Wesley Foundation campus minister. He also had some other churches in town during that period. And my mother was a teacher. Something I am currently following in her footsteps on. My father was a Methodist preacher, so we moved away in 1982, but I did get to see Fayetteville in the 70s and Fayetteville in the early 80s. We moved away and I came back here to college in 1993. So I've also lived through Fayetteville in the 90s, the 20s, the aughties, I guess, and the teens now, and now into the 20s. I had opportunities to move away, but didn't take any of them because I absolutely love this town. I've done a number of different jobs in town. I've worked for Federal Transportation Research Center housed on the U of A campus. I've owned part of a land planning business. I've worked in construction. I have served on the Planning Commission 6 years and a couple of years on Board of Adjustment. And for the last 11 years, I've been following my mother's footsteps being a teacher. As many people probably know, this is not my first run for office. I ran for Ward 4 City Council back in, 8 years ago, so in 12. And then I ran for county assessor a couple of years ago as well. I'm a public servant now, and I enjoy public service generally. I enjoyed my service on the Planning Commission. In that role, I did not have the opportunity to make policy. I see a planning commissioner's job very much to be just interpreting policy, which I tried to do. But now I would like to serve my city in a different way. I would love to be able to actually make policy for the city. I would like to do that by listening to my constituents and stakeholders. I believe strongly in collaboration, and I believe in compromise. I think that within a city, there are going to be lots of different types of opinions. We need to try to listen to all those opinions, honor those opinions, and respect them, and generally try to get everybody in the municipality to pull in the same basic direction. I think that's possible by working together, listening together, and agreeing that Fayetteville is a wonderful place to live. Sorry, that was my own timer.
Well, you were right on the money. We will now go to our next question. This will allow you to kind of expand a little bit on your opening statement. Mr. Chesser, we'll go to you first. Why did you decide to run for office?
That's a great question. I sort of left off on that at the end of my last statement. My father, who was a preacher, opposed my running for office in the beginning. He said, oh, most people who are in politics are, only there for the wrong reasons. And I said, well, as long as you have that attitude and people who might be for the right reasons are there, then that will continue to be the case. I generally disagree with him. I don't think most people are always there for the wrong reasons. I think there are some who are. The reason I ran in this particular case, and it did happen kind of towards the end of filing, or at the end of filing, was to give people a choice. My opponent's been a councilman for 12 years now and is seeking a 4th term. He's the longest serving city council member, and he was running unopposed. And I believe strongly that voters deserve a choice. I've met Mr. Petty in the past in my jobs as planning commissioner and in my past jobs in planning. Honestly, probably I suspect we agree on far more than we disagree on, over 90%, I'm sure. But what caught my attention was, as a teacher, the main focal point was I strongly disagreed on the SRO issue. I disagreed on a policy idea. I think that there's a way to fix the problem while still having SROs on duty. Most of the SROs I've ever met have been fantastic folks. So I disagreed about that. And, I thought that I heard other citizenry disagreeing on that also. And I felt like there needed to be some more listening, and that's what I intend to do. I feel like to some degree, my opponent has lost sight of that a little bit. One comment I've heard from lots of constituents is, I've written that guy like 10 times and he's never responded. I don't tend to see town halls or public forums typically. I have seen those in other wards like Ward 4. I think there need to be more of those. Part of the reason is, if we saw the thing on the SRO deal, in order to speak to this issue,
30 seconds.
Citizens had to stay up until 2 a.m. and stand in long lines where they would get 3 minutes on Zoom or maybe 5. And I think they deserve to be heard more than that. I'll say this one last thing. In the time that I have been his constituent, the only time I heard from Mr. Petty was when I was running for office, when I was collecting signatures, and he messaged me and asked, "Hey, I heard you're running against me. Is that true?" I'd love to hear more. I'm afraid you're muted.
Sorry, slippy finger. It will now go to Councilmember Petty. We will get the same question. Why did you decide to rerun for office?
And I think Councilman Petty's muted too and can't unmute.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. And I want to address a couple of things that William said, and very briefly. I hope we get to talk about it a little bit more, because 2 minutes is, of course, not a lot of time to even answer the question you posed. But It's not correct that we kicked SROs out of the school. The action we took was to reject a proposal to expand the SRO program into middle schools. And so anyone who's an SRO today still has their job. I think the city council made the right decision whenever we found out that more than half of the kids arrested on school campuses are Black. And we didn't say it's because any particular person is racist or group of people is racist. We said, this is alarming and we need to figure it out. So let's pause the expansion of the program and study the existing program we have before we expand it. And I know there are some people that think that the school board should have been able to make that decision for themselves, but the proposal was to pull a veteran officer off their city beats and put them in the schools and replace them with a rookie. That's something that the city council, I think, needs to take very seriously. For people who are wondering if I do listen, take a look at our Facebook page where we were collecting personal endorsements, people in their own words talking about their interactions with me. You can find us on Facebook at Re-elect Councilmember Matthew Petty. The reason I ran for office the first time in 2008 is because I believe very strongly that we needed to do more for climate change and for energy issues. At the time, I was running a social nonprofit called the Social Sustenance Organization. I was testifying at the Governor's Commission on Global Warming as Governor Beebe and running local workshops and education events. I just didn't feel our city was prepared, had consensus to do as much as I thought that we should. I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish on that issue. In the 12 years that I've been in service, we lead the state, and in many ways, we lead a much larger area with our solar installations and our climate action plan that we're following today. We're doing what it takes, what any municipality of our size can, to address this issue. Now we need to do more. That's absolutely a fact. But compared to all of our peers, we are bringing them along with us. And I think that's something to be proud of. I'm still passionate about it. In short, I just don't think the work is over. And I feel like I'm able to be effective. And that's why I want to seek a fourth term. I've never sought any other office outside of the city of Fayetteville. I'm running because this is my home. And in so many ways, I feel responsible to do what I can.
Thank you. We'll now go to our next question. We'll start with you, Councilmember Petty. What do you believe is the #1 issue facing Fayetteville residents?
Right now, it's the pandemic. We all know that. That's the obvious answer to give. And we've been able to help some of the businesses in the tourism sector, but there are still a lot of people in hospitality at bars and restaurants that have lost their jobs. And it doesn't look like those jobs are going to come back soon, at least not until the science catches up with the vaccine and consumer confidence returns. That's the biggest issue right now. And that's going to have a lot of secondary effects on things like what happens with housing or what happens with our infrastructure projects. We're in a good position with the municipality itself, the apparatus at City Hall, with the recent bond issue, which I voted for, to be able to keep people hired and keep people employed and keep making progress for the city so that when we're ready to recover, we can get a running start. But COVID's not the only issue. COVID has hit us against a backdrop of, frankly, really predictable challenges. We've been talking about the challenges associated with transportation and transit, land use and housing for a long time. And it's easy to say that it's complicated and that we need to work on it, but that's not enough. We have to actually achieve results. In my time, I have sought support, won support, and organized funding for our mobility plan, our recycling and trash master plan, which has led to expansion into composting. We are about to embark on a transit development plan. And I also have a framework to meet our housing affordability challenges at scale, at the scale of the region. Most people don't realize that we're already thousands of units behind in housing for Northwest Arkansas, and Fayetteville is caught up in it. Even It's simple because think about it. If there are only 10 houses and 12 families are here, 2 of them are going to have to move out. One of them might even end up homeless. And that's happening right now. The homeless statistics bloomed, more than doubled in the prior decade. And most of that growth comes from people who have been outcompeted or outbid on their leases.
30 seconds.
Thank you. So I want to address these challenges head on. We have started to address our transportation challenges in a serious way, and there's more work to do. We're right in the middle of it. We have begun to address our housing challenges from a 10,000-foot view with our new 2040 plan update, which was adopted, I believe, unanimously by the City Council last year in recognition of its balance between infill priorities and preservation priorities. And we have more to do in the future with some new programs we can implement to accelerate the way that we are meeting our housing challenge across the region. Fayetteville can be a partner, and I think we can be a leader in it. That's the priority.
Thank you. Mr. Chesser, you will now have your opportunity to answer the question. What do you believe is the #1 issue facing residents?
Thank you. Well, I agree that immediately the #1 issue is the same as it is for the globe right now, and that is COVID-19 and our response to it and the economic damage that's occurring because of it. I am very happy as a science teacher that we have a mask mandate, and I do thank the city council and mayor for their leadership on that. I think that we may need to do a little more aggressive enforcement of that mandate, but in general, I find that citizens of Fayetteville are pretty good at following it, and that makes me happy. I think it's the #1 thing we can do to reduce spread of infection with this disease right now. We have to do more to protect our businesses during this time. I agree that the aura was a great idea, but my question is what is the next big thing that we need to do? We can't just say, hey, we did the aura and now we're done. One thing that I think might be an idea is expanding parts of the aura, at least, to other portions of the city. I have suggested that maybe we could allow food delivery and food trucks into public parks. Fall in Fayetteville is, in my opinion, is the best season in one of the best locations to be in the world. It is absolutely fantastic. I would love to expand things like extra tables in parks, say 100% that it's okay for food trucks and food deliveries to be added to parks. I'm not sure I'm ready to expand the actual aura itself to parks because there's a question about alcohol in public places. I do wonder about this one question. While I agree that global warming is an incredibly, incredibly major problem for the globe, I wonder about it being a top issue for a city councilman. And I ask this for the following reason. I'm an AP environmental science teacher. The world burns 8 billion tons of coal every year and 35 billion barrels of oil. And while I think it's noble for us to do our best at a municipal level, I question how much we can do in a city of 100,000 people to affect it.
30 seconds.
I do think it's important to be a leader and try to adjust, try to be a city that gets other cities to actually also come along with us. But I think a better way to do that might be to increase things like solar. My question on the police station isn't what should the zoning be? My question is, why aren't we asking where the solar panels are going to go on that building and other buildings like the parking deck that was built 6 years ago? Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to our next question. Mr. Chesser, we'll stay on you for this. Do you support continued funding for Ozark Regional Transit?
Absolutely. I think transit is a tricky problem. As I mentioned earlier, I used to be the communications director for a rural transportation research center. It was a federal DOT center located in the civil engineering department at the University of Arkansas. We've got a problem in that post-war cities were built for cars, and we kind of moved to a position where everything was car dominated. I think that ultimately that was a mistake to go that far. Obviously, cars made America sort of what it is, for good or ill. There are both types in that equation. But we could compare a couple of cities really quickly, Los Angeles and New York. New York has a robust transit system and has for a long time, the metro or the subway system. LA is more spread out and has less in the way of great transit. The problem with solving transit problems like ORT is getting enough density and enough stops, enough places for transit routes to go to. As the region increases in population, and I think we're destined to continue to increase in population, and as we increase in business nodes, I think that we have more and more opportunities to increase the way we do transit in this area. I've thought a lot since the early part of this century about, would it be possible to do rail? I wish that it was. I don't know if we're there yet density wise. Part of the problem is we do have existing rail lines, but it's difficult to get passenger rail onto freight rail tracks. In one case, the freight rail tracks are actually owned by someone else who might not want us to use them. In another, at least when I was looking at this issue 15 years ago, there were not a lot of passenger rail vehicles. Specifically, I could find one that was still being made that would fit on this gauge scale of freight rail. So we're left with things like building an entire rail network.
30 seconds.
Thank you. So I do want to continue to increase our transit options. I think that it's an incredibly important thing to offer our citizens different ways of moving about. I do think that's one of the ways we do combat global warming generally. I would love for us to switch to something like electric, but I think we need to look at what that would be like in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Councilmember Petty, you will now get the same question. Do you support continued funding for Ozark Regional Transit?
Yes, absolutely. I voted for funding for Ozark Regional Transit every year since we first started funding. I don't remember how many years it's been now, but I want to say it's been most of my term of service. And more recently, last year, we were presented with a proposal, almost 2 years ago, we were presented with a proposal to make all fares free for Ozark Regional Transit. And I supported that in committee and recommended it to the council, and then voted again for it at council. That was a really important step in our transit landscape, because we have Razorback Transit, which is fare free, and Ozark Regional Transit, which isn't. So that was the beginning of a way of having a good transfer system. I intend to continue to support Ozark Regional Transit. It's essential. I wanted to address a couple of things that were said. I helped craft the outdoor recreation area program. I also wrote the law, which is already long-standing, that allows food trucks in parks. I wrote that with the Planning Commission. Food trucks can do that now. And I also supported the law that allows the mayor to allow alcohol sales in parks a limited number of days per year. And when we were voting on the outdoor recreation area, I advocated strongly that we expand it to parks and that we make it more permanent. And most importantly, that we expand the pilot, which is only planned for 2 or 3 days per week in the beginning, that we expand it to all 7 days, which has been essential during COVID response. I feel I've been very active on this issue, and much of what's being called for is stuff that I've worked on and plan to continue to work on. The question about why climate change should be a priority for the council, I find a little confusing, honestly, because all of the things that were said after that statement were climate solutions. We need a council member who understands how these things are linked together. That's how we get the best solutions and the best bang for our buck. And these things are definitely linked together. When we talk about purposeful density, when we talk about transit and expanding that, we're talking about climate solutions. What about tree planting? We have a tree planting program and one of the best tree ordinances in the state. It should be absolutely stronger, but every year during the legislative session, the state legislature threatens to remove our ability to even have a tree ordinance. So we're trying to maintain what we have for climate reasons. We are trying to expand upon the good ideas and the good work we've done for climate reasons. And it doesn't mean that we're going to end climate change for the world, but the idea that the city won't play a significant part, I can't agree with that. We all have a role to play, especially when we have power over something as important as a municipality.
Thank you. We'll now go to our next question. Councilmember Petty, will stay on you. How should Fayetteville prepare its workforce in the 21st century?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question that I try to think about a lot, because if you were to ask me what jobs are going to be available in 2050, I can't tell you. Who could tell you? We have no idea what the employment landscape will look like in 2050. But I do think we have an understanding of the fundamental skills that we need to be imparting to our youth and to our, especially to our entrepreneurial residents. So I think that we need to, of course, work on tech skills and teamwork management. I think that's the easy part of the answer. And in a way, a lot of what our grade school and our high school students are going through now are going to prepare them for an environment where they can work remotely and they can always work for their laptop. That's really important. But just as important is to recognize that a lot of the jobs we're going to have to do over the next century won't be done from behind a desk. We are so far understaffed in our labor market for construction. It's one of the reasons housing prices are what they are, because labor is constrained. In 2009, when the recession hit, it didn't just hit the markets, it hit the labor pool. And people who were plumbers stopped being plumbers. They found new careers and they're not coming back to be plumbers, and we've never caught back up. We have to keep training people to do the work that only a real person can do. And Fayetteville is well prepared to do that with the expansion of our new library, which is going to include an innovation center with many, many free resources, including a virtual reality room that people can program themselves for free, music studios and film studios, and so on and so forth. I think we have no idea how the library will be used by the people that we already have in Fayetteville who are creative and eager. Also, I don't want to leave out the importance of social emotional learning. We've done a great job in the Fayetteville School District of making social emotional learning part of our curricula. I think we have to continue to be committed to this, because it's the one constant that is going to hold true no matter how technology changes, no matter what challenges we face. The principal challenge of any organization or any leader will be to have an effective organization with people that can trust one another and work together. And I think that's the core skill we need to focus on if we want to train the next generation of effective leaders.
Thank you. Mr. Chesser, you will have the same question. How should Fayetteville prepare its workforce in the 21st century?
As an educator, I absolutely love this question. Part of my answer is going to mirror Mr. Petty's answer. I'll tell you a couple of things that I usually say to my students. A couple of years ago, there was a story, I think in the New York Times, about it was actually a politician who said that welders make more than philosophers. And then there's a story in the New York Times which talked about, oh no, a philosophy professor makes this much money and a welder makes this much money. And you can clearly see the philosophy professor makes quite a bit more. This was a pretty funny question to me, because I myself hold a degree in philosophy. And I really felt like the Times mishandled that answer. Yes, it is true that some philosophy professors, very few people who get degrees in philosophy become professors and then move on to make money as a professor in that job. Although it's interesting to note they make less and less going forward. But there are far more people who get a welding certificate who actually get a job welding. So if we were to add up the total money made by welders and the total money made by philosophers doing philosophy, the welders would win by a long shot. So I thought that's kind of funny. One of the things I always tell my students is don't let anybody tell you you have to have a college degree to be successful. I've got 3 of them, and a plumber will probably make more money than I will ever make, to Mr. Petty's point. Plumbers are always needed. People swinging hammers are always needed. My wife designs buildings and teaches people how to design buildings. She's a professor of architecture. Without somebody swinging a hammer, without somebody running electric, without somebody doing the plumbing, my wife's designs never leave the computer on which she draws them. I think that, and have thought for 20 years, that we have disrespected the trades at our peril. And I absolutely think that we need to increase our trade education generally across the board. I think we should do this by expanding what we do starting in high school. And I think we need to increase trade education opportunities across the board post high school. I would love to see the ability for people to get more trade education in Fayetteville itself. I don't know that the University of Arkansas probably would take up that challenge, but our community colleges might want to take up those challenges. My timer says I'm out of time. Is that correct?
Yes, it seemed like you were keeping your own time pretty well there, so I wasn't going to interrupt. We
Thank you very
will
much.
now go to our next question. We'll keep you on, Mr. Chesser. First question was about preparing our workforce. This next question is about how we can attract more businesses to Fayetteville. Just like to hear your ideas and thoughts on that.
You got it. This is a major one that I think is something we really have to deal with. I mentioned I've lived in this town across the last 5 decades now, which is a terrifying thing to say. Coming up on into my 6th. If you'd have told me, if you would have told me as recently as 5 years ago that at some point in the future, I would at some point decide that maybe I would go to a different Northwest Arkansas community to have dinner or to go enjoy a museum or something of that nature, I would have probably laughed at that idea. And yet we have seen other communities in Northwest Arkansas grow rapidly. I'm glad that they have, but I have a rule of thumb that I kind of have come up with as I've thought about this. And I call it the craft brewer's rule of thumb. And it's this: if someone's going to start a craft brewery in Northwest Arkansas, and their first thought of where they're going to start that brewery isn't Fayetteville, Arkansas, then I feel like we've got a problem. That used to be the case, and I'm not sure it's the case right now. I'm not saying that we don't have great breweries. We do. I'm saying that it might not be the first place someone chose to go. And I want to get back to the point where we are number 1 on that list. In the past, I think that we've been able to rely upon jobs at the university to provide a lot of our employment opportunities, especially a lot of our higher paying employment opportunities. But we've got neighbors to the north who have some fairly large businesses bringing a fairly large amount of money to their towns. A few years ago, when I started teaching, I would drive to Springdale every day to teach, and I was in the traffic where people might have had jobs in another town, but they were still living here. And I'm afraid we're starting to lose some of that as well. I think it's really important that we increase tech and other growth sector jobs in Fayetteville. One thing we might do is reach out to some of those employers in other cities and talk to them about the possibility of locating some of their businesses, more of their business portions in this city. But I think we've got to change a little bit about how we approach business to get them to do that. I see I'm out of time.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Councilmember Petty, same question. How can Fayetteville attract more businesses to town?
Thank you, Taylor. And I will need the 30-second warning. I'm not keeping my own time.
Happy to. Thank you.
Well, first, I think if you look at the numbers in business recruitment and the number of businesses that get started, the pandemic being an exception, Fayetteville's doing a pretty good job of continuing to recruit businesses. I understand the sentiment that William is expressing, but I think we need to remember something about human nature. For Northwest Arkansas, a lot of those other cities are hometowns to other people. And when they decide they want to start a business, a lot of people decide they want to improve their hometown. That happens in Fayetteville. Crisis Brewing didn't look somewhere else. Fossil Cove didn't look somewhere else. Apple Blossom Brewery, rest in peace, didn't do something else. There are a lot of breweries that still choose Fayetteville, and a lot of businesses that still look at Fayetteville first. It's hard to compete with the wealth that is up north, but we don't need to go begging. We don't need to hold hands. We can have go out with our hands held out. We can have a strategy, and we do have a strategy. I believe very strongly that the next big thing for Fayetteville will be created here, not recruited to here. It will be created here. I led with Councilmember Sarah Marsh, we sponsored a resolution that led to the funding and the creation of Fayetteville's first economic development strategic plan. That's adopted now. That's the Fayetteville First Plan in 2016 that led to the creation of a new department with dedicated staff for recruitment and retention and local business development. That's the Department of Economic Vitality, staffed by Devin Howland and Chung Tan. That's a very important department. And in addition to that, we revised a contract that we have with the chamber so that the deliverables are more straightforward and clear under state law. And we also entered into a new contract with Startup Junkie that complements the chamber's recruitment contract with entrepreneurial development. If you are someone in Fayetteville that has a business idea and you think that it could be something, go to Startup Junkie. They will mentor you. They will connect you. They will help you find funding. They will help you with your business plan. And it's all free. It's all free. That's how we're approaching economic development in this city. We have those conversations with businesses up north. We do that all the time. We're aggressive about it. And so is everybody else. But we're in those conversations and we are making a difference. Look at where Fayetteville is. Fayetteville can't be the center of attention without being the center of growth. Those ideas have spread out. And I don't think people in Fayetteville want to be the center of growth for everything in Northwest Arkansas. I think at this point, we can afford to be a little bit selective about what we want to bring to Fayetteville. Each town in Northwest Arkansas has its own identity, its own destiny. And I think Fayetteville is well prepared to keep following the strategies that have been working for us over the last couple of years, especially with entrepreneurial development.
Thank you. We'll now go to our next question. Councilmember Petty, we'll keep you here. What are your goals for your first year back in office?
One of my big goals is to directly get at the housing affordability with a brand new program, a novel program that I call Pattern Zone. It's something that I've been fortunate to have invented and have developed with colleagues and put to use for another municipality. My day job is to do city planning and city facilitation. And one of the things that I have been so passionate about is how to actually address the housing challenge. What a pattern zone does is a city licenses a set of pre-approved buildings. They can change up which buildings are pre-approved every few years as they like. It's a voluntary program. So when applicants choose to use a pre-approved building, they're striking a deal and they're saying, in exchange for the savings, in exchange for these building plans, in exchange for an expedited permit, I'm going to build this exactly like the city wants it to be built. That has some tremendous savings potential, $5,000 to $8,000 per unit on something like a 4-unit building, or up to $13,000 per unit for a more complicated mixed-use building like a 12-plex with a corner store. This is a real program we've already tested. And the thing that I like most about this is that as a zoning tool, it functions as an economic incentive. The city pays once to license those buildings, and they can distribute those savings to every single applicant that walks in the door. I think if this is paired with some other regional financial mechanisms, such as a mortgage insurance fund, like we have used in other regions and like the nation has used to assist first-time home buyers, we could really get at the scale of the housing problem. And so implementing a program for pre-approved, expedited permits for buildings is something that I want to focus on. And if the pandemic hasn't hit our budget too hard, I think we're going to get to do it in 2021. Beyond that, I know you asked what my top 3, and I'm probably about out of time. And I want to say that converting our efforts for COVID response into long-term recovery is my next priority. The parking to patio program that I authored and helped get passed isn't a permanent program. It needs to be made permanent. The other changes we've made with the ORA need to be made permanent. And I think we're going to get a chance to talk about that in the first half of next year.
30 seconds if you'd like to finish.
I think I'll yield my time.
Mr. Chesser, you will have the same question. What are your goals for your first year in office?
Well, I'm going to start by responding to something, which is the pattern zoning idea. One of the things that I think is an integral part of what I call the Fayetteville spirit is that we're eclectic, and what is being proposed in this pattern zoning idea sounds like on its surface, maybe I'm wrong, what I call little boxes. It sounds like we're going to get a lot of the same kind of units built. I'm not sure that that's what I like. Mr. Petty's shaking his head, so maybe he'll respond to that. But if you're buying a set of plans, then that sounds sort of like that to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's an interesting idea. I'd have to learn more about it to know if I could be convinced. In terms of what my goals are, the major ones is, as an educator, I know that the very first thing we often have to do is learn a bunch of things. I've got 6 years really 8 years sort of generally in planning for the city, because Board of Adjustment is involved on fixing planning problems. And I've got several years on the private side of planning. So I feel fairly good about that. But what I mean by learning is this. I've said several times that I believe what needs to happen is more listening. And what I mean by that is actively going out and talking to stakeholders and talking to citizens and finding out what it is that they need in the city. I've gotten some endorsements and some support lately, and I think that the major reason that I got those wasn't because I was proposing something radically different in terms of directions for the city, but simply because I said, here's what I promise you. I promise that I will listen to what you have to say. I will seek out the expertise of people in the field, and I will ask you to come to the table and discuss what it is you need, and we'll hammer out decisions together. I know as a science teacher that my job is to gather evidence and come up with the best solutions I can based on that evidence. I think what I bring to the table that's maybe most important is a strong knowledge that I am not an expert in all these fields. And in fact, what I must do is listen to what other folks have to say to help me learn what I need to do to make the city better.
Thank you. All righty, we'll go to our next question. Mr. Chester, we'll keep you up. What kind of projects should the city be undertaking? We have a list of bond-approved initiatives. So outside of the ones that the city is now obligated to continue on, are there any focuses that you believe the city should be taking, or are there any projects that you want to spearhead in your years of office?
Well, I did mention, while I think that it's difficult for a city our size to greatly impact global warming. Example, I think we could bring our carbon footprint to zero and it would not be measurable on a global scale. That does not mean that we shouldn't attempt to bring our carbon footprint down. I definitely think that that is an appropriate goal. I asked a question earlier, which was this. There were questions about zoning of the new police station. Those were resolved recently. But my question is, when we're talking about the design of a new municipal building, why aren't we talking about where the solar panels are going to go in every case, especially if a number one goal is trying to affect climate change? When the Spring Street parking structure was built, I was told back then that there was a plan to put solar panels on the top of that building to shade the parking up top and potentially serve as power for future electric vehicles. I have not seen those put in place. Maybe Mr. Petty has pushed for those and I was unaware of it. He's smirking, so maybe that's the case. I do know that the mayor pushed for the solar farm, and I'm assuming that Mr. Petty supported that. But why not expand solar panels to every municipal building in the city? I wonder if solar panels have been incorporated into the pattern zoning that Mr. Petty has been designing. I hope that they have been. I definitely think we need to build the police station that was voted on. And I think that we should use the plans that were established by architects working with the people who will be using that building. I can tell you that my wife is an architect, and if she was designing that building, she would not go to the city council to ask what the design should be. She would go to the users of that building to see what that design should be. Lastly, in discussions with the fire department, I think we need to look at some expansions of their personnel. They're using 3 people per truck right now. And they mentioned that standards are really coming up to where we need to be 4 people on a truck. I'm frankly kind of shocked they can put out a fire with 3 men on a truck. I would like to see a project to figure out how to increase support for them and hire some of those folks we need to keep us safe.
Thank you. Councilmember Petty, same question. What kind of projects do you think the city should be undertaking?
You asked me specifically not to talk about the bond projects, didn't you?
Just since those are already approved and kind of slated, if there are any other focuses or projects that you want outside of that, you can mention the bond projects that you are wanting to prioritize as well.
We keep a 5-year plan for capital improvement projects from our normal sales tax revenue that exists outside of the bonded projects, and we get the opportunity to revise and tweak that every year, and then do a major revision every 5 years. And I think we need to stick to that. That's our sidewalks, that's our trails, that's our drainage and our flooding program, which is brand new. It's the first time we've had consensus and funding to be able to address it, and we're getting started. So we need to keep that up. It's easy to check what happened with these past decisions. The Spring Street parking deck was way over budget, so we cut the solar panels and we kept the wiring so we could put the solar panels on them in the future. It's easy to check these things. When it comes to the police station, hey, I voted for the police station in the bond. My opponent didn't vote in the bond. I know it's taboo, but yesterday he said it's because he was mourning his mother's death. I feel for that. But it was 6 months earlier. And he also said that it was his birthday week. His birthday was during the early voting period. We have to vote for these things. It's the basic thing to do. By the way, I haven't criticized the police station design. The police station's design of the building is unchanged. The user feedback is incorporated. What I've criticized is the site design and the process that's led to it. The comments I made in May in public at a city council meeting that was the very, very first time I saw the schematic design are the same comments that were made by the planning department in the working committee 5 months earlier that got ignored. And then when we made the comments the first time we ever saw it about how it should follow our urban design principles that the planning commission is going to have to enforce, the same principles that we make everyone follow, took the team some time to redo the site plan. But that's proceeding. The mayor said on Tuesday it's on time. Before that meeting, William, I know that you were trying to say that that was a vote that absolutely needed to happen. It seems like you're grasping at straws for things that you can oppose me for, like the police station.
30 seconds.
Our views on police are very similar. I've read your questionnaire. My questionnaires are available for anyone to read, and they always have been, including my answers directly to the police. We're going to change the way we do policing in the city. We're going to build a police station because we need it for the service levels we already have and the levels where we expect them to be in the future. But we're still going to have these conversations. It's important.
Thank you. We will now go to our closing statements. We have time for the candidates so we can finish here by 5. We will reverse the order from the opening statements. So Mr. Chesser, you will give your closing statement first.
Thank you. I feel like, sorry. Sorry, I'm a little stunned by an earlier comment. My apologies. I'm running for Ward 2 City Council because what I have heard is not that my opponent is unintelligent or incapable or necessarily even bad at what he does. What I have heard is that he has stopped listening to his constituents. And what I have observed is that he has stopped communicating with his constituents. Other than texting me to ask me if it was true if I was running against him, I have not heard from him. Later that day, before I filed for office, my Ward 2 representative, who works for me as a citizen of Fayetteville, announced my race before I had filed to run, which I find chilling and really kind of unacceptable in a council member. He didn't even know if I was running yet. He does not seem to want to hear from people who work from the city, like the police department. He does not seem to want to hear from people who are stakeholders, like the realtors. I feel like he's lost sight of what it means to serve the people who have voted for him. And I know that he has strong vocal support from some members of the public. I see it frequently online. I would like for him to commit to having public meetings. Even if he wins this election, it would be nice if he would commit to having public meetings with constituents on a fairly regular basis so that it's not required when constituents want to voice their opinions on an issue that they clearly find important
30
to
seconds.
stay up till 2 a.m. In the middle of the night to be able to do so. I intend to listen to the city of Fayetteville, stakeholders, constituents, everyone. Doesn't mean I'm going to just make decisions based on the rule of the majority. It's still my job to make decisions based on what I believe is right. But I will listen, and I think it's important for voters to have a choice. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your time joining us today on the forum. Councilmember Petty, you will now have 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Sure, thank you, Taylor. I want to say again that it's, I think forums like this are extremely important, and I enjoy participating in this democratic process. William, I'm sorry I don't text you about every issue. I'm probably not going to start texting you about every issue. And I'm committed to holding public meetings, just as I've been committed to holding public meetings over the last 12 years. My attendance rate at city council meetings is 91%, and it's even higher for all of the committee meetings and all of the standalone public hearings and city council tours that we do. And I'm committed to holding meetings in neighborhoods and in the ward when there's an issue that is salient and pertinent, and we need to have an extra meeting to cover it out. In many ways, I lead the conversations asking for more public hearings when we have issues like that, and it seems like people aren't being listened to. I know there are a lot of people that I've worked with over the last 12 years, and where we've ended up is we've had to agree to disagree. And I've gotten better at that over the last 12 years and maintaining those relationships. And I've learned that it's really important not to hold grudges, because we're going to work together to move forward no matter what. That's my worldview, is we'll get through it if we work together. You only have to look at the statements that are being made by people who have worked with me to know that I do my best to listen. Listening is not enough. It isn't. At some point, decisions have to be made and programs have to be devised. And I leave it to the voters of Ward 2 to decide for themselves if they think the programs I propose and the programs I've championed over the last 12 years and will implement over the next 4 years are the programs that are representative of your wishes and the values you've communicated to me and the council. Just recently, I got a public input form created and modified so that we could collect better data from people. In this day and age, should we really have to make someone log on or visit another building at a certain time of day just to collect their input? We can do better than that. 2020 now. And I think we are. I think we're doing better than the way it's been characterized. So I'm here. I want your support. I am eager to continue to serve. COVID has been my focus. It's going to continue to be my focus for a little while longer, hopefully not too long. And that's against the backdrop of climate change and housing. I'm here to work on issues that matter to us and that will change the city for the better, like transit and housing and helping businesses survive during COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you to you both for joining us today at this forum. We at the Chamber believe that it's important for the residents to hear from their candidates, and we believe that it's important to facilitate these types of conversations. And so thank you to you both for taking time out of your day to join us today. And thank you for sacrificing parts of your lives to even just run the campaign and to put this much attention on your own personal lives in order to do better for the residents of Fayetteville. For those that have joined us here today, thank you for participating, and we hope that you will share this once it goes live on YouTube and our Facebook. We will do our best to get it edited and uploaded as soon as possible. We're still working on the Ward 1 to make sure it gets uploaded. We do have a forum tomorrow for Ward 3. We do have a confirmation for both candidates, and then our last forum for Ward 4 will be next week on Thursday. So we hope to see you all there. Thank you so much. Have a good night.